Welcome, petals. If your life revolves around flowers, this is the podcast for you. This episode's a bit different as I don't have a singular guest, but I've had feedback from flower farmers from the top of the north to here in Central Otago. Before we dive in, we welcome Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers as our Season 3 sponsor. Blooming in New Zealand since 1992, they're a vibrant, modern wholesale business, bringing premium hand-selected blooms to florists and retailers nationwide. Welcome to this episode of the podcast, Petals. I'm your host, Jo Robinson, and today we are reviewing the flower growing season for spring 2025 and summer 2026. This episode's a bit different as I don't have a singular guest, but I've had feedback from flower farmers from the top of the north to here in Central Otago. Just in case it makes a difference to how you use the info in today's episode, I got the information from growers in late March and recorded this episode at Easter. But before you dash off to get a pen and paper to take notes, if you want a full transcript of today's episode, just post a comment wherever you are listening or watching this, and I'll send you the full transcript so that you can just relax, listen, and enjoy. So we'll start off with a bit of info on where each grower is based and general summary of their season if this was provided. First up is Astrid of Fawn Plants at Gulf Harbour. Astrid describes Gulf Harbour as the tropical hibiscus coast, and she grows on clay soils but on the side of the hill. Being on the side of a hill is great for drainage, so good land choice, Astrid. Then Vicky, who's in Hikarangi in Northland. Vicky had strange weather with an early spring, then things heated up quickly and became an odd mix of periods of dry heat followed by torrential and humid weather. Flowers struggled to settle in because of this. Now Ellie from Six Oaks shop in Kaitaia in the far, far north. Ellie is a homesteader and she grows seasonal fruit, plants and flowers, all while renovating a villa and working a farm. Ellie also had weird weather and a slow start due to extreme heat and torrential storms. And probably, she admits, not enough prep to the beds. But once they were going, having used comfrey tea, then eggshell and banana juice tea, they have continued to constantly produce flowers. Melanie from Manukau. Melanie's description of the season was unusual here. She goes on to say that having so much rain initially was very nice as she doesn't have watering set up in the way most flower farmers would. For those who haven't heard my interview with Melanie, she grows in a landscape setting, not in rows as most conventional farmers would. For Melanie, that early rain meant that a large area of her dahlias were just too wet. She feels they are only just now getting going, and she's not sure how long those blooms will last. Now Daisy from Whangarei Heads in Northland. This is Daisy's first year growing cut flowers for selling, and she says it has been a huge learning curve. I have to say, Daisy, what a challenging year to start selling. I hope you're now fully into planning your second season. Then Penelope from Martinborough. Penelope is an experienced grower and she's lived previously in Central Otago, so her and I bond on our weather conditions. Penelope is also the creator of a crop planning spreadsheet that she sells on her website. When Penelope was describing her season, she asked, would Bleurgh cover it? I'll let that be the word. It's a Bleurgh season for Penelope. Now Sophia from Wide Sky Acres in Canterbury. Sophia is a regenerative organic grower of specialty cut flowers and produce, and she aims to make her customers feel good both on the inside and the out. Sophia had a great comment. Here it is. Oh, if my dirt could talk, it would whimper, curse, and then complain about neglect. Love that, Sophia. But similar to Vicky in Northland, Sophia had a quick, hot start that made for a fast and furious early spring. Here at Scrubby Gully in Central Otago, we've had our farm for 26 years and have been flower farming for 25 of those years. Originally, we focused on spring bulbs and peonies, but we've been adding and subtracting crops over the years. We try to run a closed-circuit growing system, meaning that we make our own compost and fertilisers, something that is reassuring in the current political upheaval, which is impacting on all growing costs. And then we have Emma from the Marlborough Sounds. As Emma says, my review would start with mild cursing, and the cursing would only get stronger to explain my season. But on the upside, Emma has supplied more events, photographed and supplied flowers for weddings. Plus, she's just finished up photographing another birth. How awesome, Emma. And Bronwyn from Darfield. Like Emma, Bronwyn had a lot of choice words around the weather. 3 hail events, the first in early November, stripping most things, and then foliage damage all season. But Bronwyn is proud of the resilience she has built into her system and found that things bounced back faster than expected. I'm really hoping that I'll be able to discuss Bronwyn's resilience and her system when I interview her for the podcast later on in the season, because I think we all have a lot that we could learn on this, even us seasoned growers. So one of the questions we asked was, what has worked best this season? And some people answered this with an activity and some with a crop. But here we go. Here's the answers. Bronwyn from Darfield. She made huge progress in getting flowers out to florists and growing her share of the local market. And weddings, she found, have been such fun to do. And the more she does, the more she gets to do. That's just awesome, Bronwyn. Vicky in Northland, her Zinnia Binary Giants and Queenie series were a reliable staple all the way from early December through to now. She needs to remember to do more successions of these plants as they get tired after a couple of flushes. But her late succession zinnias are flourishing. She's had no powdery mildew this year on either dahlias or zinnias. The dahlias were late this year, coming into their own now, when everything else is pretty much done. The ageratum has been a superstar, especially the purple, as it really pops amongst corals, oranges, pinks and yellows. Cornflower was such a spring workhorse for Vicky, and she has learnt to net it high so it doesn't tangle. She loves how it provides a pop of blue for everything. For Vicky, Matricaria was also a superstar, but needs continuous successions to get those long stems. Calla lilies were great and useful for elevating bouquets. Snapdragons were also really awesome this year, and Vicky has learnt that adhering to the grow time groups is essential. Madam Butterfly, a reliable standout. As far as sunflowers went, Vincent's Choice was reliable and so quick to grow, but Procut White Night and White Light were also awesome. Astrid from Gulf Harbour says that she had a very early summer there, a hot November. This year she did her first year of dahlias. She'd bought some amazing clumps from Hands in the Dirt, but on her site found that dahlias get powdery mildew in a millisecond. Astrid goes on to say, even though we get a long season here, we also get every bug and fungus that you can imagine, as it's hot and humid. She quickly figured out that the dahlias need leaves stripping from the base and needed spraying. She does prefer her roses to dahlias as she loves the scent, but both require regular spraying on her site. Astrid only uses natural products and relies on a decent paper wasp nest on her roof. The wasps eat the aphids, caterpillar and beetle larvae. I'll just add a little note from me there, hubby being a beekeeper. Although they're not as aggressive as German wasps, paper wasps do predate on honeybees. So they're not very, it's the right word, they're not very selective in what they eat. They just like protein. The single best annual for Penelope were the asters, selling by the bucket for weddings. Also Trachelium, sold so much of this to florists and other growers. Ellie from Six Oaks shop in Kaitaia in the far, far north built new raised beds the week before Labour weekend planting. It's okay, Ellie, that was on time. It was before planting, not after. She planted 50 dahlia plants in each, which gave 25 centimetres between each plant, which raised lots of eyebrows and numerous unhappy dahlia grower comments. But Ellie made sure she trimmed off all the lower leaves for airflow, and they have done really well despite that. And I have to say, Ellie, that I plant mine even closer than that, but we are normally hot and dry, not humid. Best for Melanie from Manukau were the spring flowers, particularly the hardy annuals, which grow magnificently for her. But she struggles to get summer crops in, as it's just an incredibly busy time for her. Ultimately, the best has been marigolds, which she grew from plugs, and they've been absolutely amazing, around 1 metre tall with huge flowers. Also, Melanie's second season floret zinnias were fantastic, while all other zinnias were nowhere near as good. Daisy from Northland found that early on in the season her snapdragons and statice were just absolutely incredible. So much life from one plant, healthy and full of blooms. And some of the sunflowers were fabulous, and the dahlias are still throwing out. Fresh cut flower wholesalers believe wholesaling should never be old school or predictable. Driven by passion and a genuine heart for the craft, the team brings a modern energy to everything they do. By curating top quality flowers and tracking seasonal trends, they provide a fresh vision to the industry. Whether you're a grower looking for a trusted channel, a retailer filling your shelves, or a wedding florist crafting the unforgettable, Fresh Cut is the partner who understands the art and the business. There's excitement ahead with big ideas blooming. Fresh Cut, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. So then we got on to the worst crops of the season. For Penelope in Martinborough, the worst crop was Lisianthus. It just failed to flush even yet. The marigolds were brilliant crop-wise, but they didn't sell. Flowering kale was a disaster because the season had been so wacky, and Penelope thought that the white butterflies were done and dusted. But no, she says it was all her fault. She just wasn't prepared. Vicky from Hikurangi said her worst crop for the third year in a row was Astrid. She can never grow it tall enough and will do more research or abandon it. I have to say to that research is the key, Vicky, as there's so many varieties, and some need pinching and some don't. Whether I pinch or not, I don't expect a reflush of stems. For Vicky, Celosia is normally awesome and reliable, but not this year. Stems were short and very late to get going, even though she planted nice and early. Cosmos Cupcake and Seashells were awesome as per usual, but after 2 seasons of Kairo and Apricot Lemonade, Vicky is abandoning these 2 particular types as their stems were way too short. I can't comment on those because I've never grown either of them. But Vicky also has trouble with Nigella stems always being too short. I don't quite understand that one. I direct seed these in autumn and have no trouble with short stems, although I do grow the Nigella mainly for the seed pods, which are very popular with florists. And then again for Vicky, the sunflower Moulin Rouge was quick to drop petals. Yep, agree with that one. And other sunflower leaves were eaten and gobbled ferociously by nasty, fat, green caterpillars. Yuck, that gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about fat, green caterpillars. Never mind. So Ellie from Kaitaia says that her zinnias this year were terrible and are only just coming right now, while Astrid from Gulf Harbour also says her zinnias were her worst crop, but it was because she chose the wrong colours. She's still pulling out the cactus mix of fluorescent red and orange zinnias. Melanie from Manukau put her hand up to say her worst crop were her summer snaps. Autumn planted ones were great, but those planted in November and December were awful. Daisy from Whangarei Heads also said her worst crop this season has been zinnias. For Daisy, these so-called easy growers have been a challenge in all ways, from being nailed by slugs in their early start, then weather damage, either too wet, too windy, then disease, and just average flower growth. Daisy has since tried them in her greenhouse, and they seem to be a lot happier with life in a more controlled environment than the ones outside in the patch. Sophia from Canterbury said her overwintered sweet peas were almost a total flop. I don't think you can blame your growing techniques here, Sophia. I've talked to some very experienced sweet pea growers who have had an awful season, so you're not alone. For us here in Central Otago, it's a tough decision on the worst crop this season. It's between snapdragons, zinnias and asters, but probably zinnias. Many zinnia seedlings were thrown out before they even got in the ground. The only snaps that were any good were Madam Butterfly, and the asters, which we purchased as an apricot, were such a horrible colour that they couldn't be used for weddings. Now, that could be the fault of the very bright light we have here in Central Otago, but apricot, they were gross. I couldn't sell them because I didn't like them enough to even try and sell them. Learning curve. Now, Emma from Marlborough Sounds commented, "My season has been awful weather-wise. Winter started off what seemed to be well with some nice mild frosts, which are great to set the peonies up for the season ahead." That's what I thought. She then had over 600 millimetres of rain throughout June and early July. I'm sorry, that blows me away. That's more than our annual rainfall, and she had it in 6 weeks. Then the temps in July were weirdly mild, so the tulips started coming up in force. Then all the early, mid and late season varieties all bloomed together early in August. And Emma doesn't even want to discuss the ranunculus, as it was the worst season that she's ever had with those. But after a wet winter, Emma also had a wet spring. So wet, she had to delay the dahlia tubers going in by 6 weeks, but she still lost a few to the very wet conditions. In November, she had some extremely hot days. Then she had very strong northerly winds. So the peonies, although set up for a very high wind zone area, got totally overheated and bashed around. So lots of deformed heads from the winds. The dahlias struggled to take off, and even in January, they were slow to flower. New Year and January had strong southerly winds and cool summer days that blew over chook houses, basically swiped every piece of fruit from the trees. Emma lost trees, shrubs and sunflowers at different stages. These weren't blown over, but the cold winds ruined development. This is Emma's 9th year on the property, and she has never had strong southerlies in summer. So summer beds weren't in a position sheltered from southerlies, they were sheltered from northerlies. Then the weather kind of stopped in mid-February. No strong winds, no summer warmth, no rain, but very heavy morning dew, then the occasional 28 or 30 degree days to burn off the dew, also known as burning the flowers, or the alternative of still days where the plants would just stay wet. Now, I have to agree with you on this one. You're so right, Emma. The dew followed by the hot, bright sun, and it just cooked so many blooms. Literally all of my limelight hydrangeas got cooked. It's just so annoying because I love them so much. So Emma fed plants, she staked extra as she could, but nothing this season has really helped. Only the fact that she already grew more than she actually needed. And then we got on to sales channels, the best and the worst. Vicky in Hikurangi said she sells her bouquets for either $30 or $50. For her, most people choose the more pricey option. She only offers 2 choices, pastels or bright mixes. Vicky doesn't do farmers markets anymore, as she doesn't want to be stuck at a farmers market all day on a weekend when she works full-time. Vicky really enjoyed the season being the first one where people worked around her instead of her working around them. She says her best sales channel for her is Facebook community groups and marketplace. Lots of engagement, and it works well for her small business. Either pick up from her home or local delivery flat fee of $10. The worst sales channel for Vicky this year was her local general store. She thought this was going to be a great collaboration as it's a busy little shop, but people were much more interested in getting ice cream or snacks for camping and the beach. So that channel was a flop for her. Penelope in Martinborough said that retail from the shop in town is still her best channel, but it's declining and she thinks it will get worse. At the same time, the DIY weddings that Penelope supplies increased in number. She had big sales through the website and a huge increase of sales to local florists and to other growers. Ellie in Kaitaia said that she does custom orders starting at $20 wrapped and with ribbon, and leftover flowers are divided into $10 and $20 jars. She sells these from an honesty box store that she runs. On average, she sells 10 and $10 jars, 4 $20 jars, and approximately $150 of custom orders per day. She picks in the evening and makes orders and jars at about 4 a.m. Yes, I said she does it at 4 a.m. And then she goes to the gym at 6 a.m., delivering to her farm store at the end of her drive. She posts on Facebook once she's at the gym. Most of her flowers are sold before 8 a.m. when people are on their way to work. As Ellie says, it's not conventional by any means, but it works for them because they're on State Highway 1. My note on this is I just can't believe that Ellie is happy with a 4 a.m. start. 5 a.m. I do often, but 4 a.m. not this chook. I'm too old for that. But well done, Ellie. Good on you. Melanie from Manukau says her best channel will always be her own florist shop, The Wild Rose. As Melanie says, it's nice to not have to worry about where the flowers go. Valentine's Day is huge for the wild rose, with a month of normal sales going out across 2 days. Being able to pick enough foliage to meet that demand is quite a challenge for Melanie. Emma from the Marlborough Sounds says sales and orders were down all season, but worst from early February. In her words, we do grow a want, not a need. And that's a really good point, Emma. What we sell isn't essential. We have to remember that. Emma had early spring weddings that she supplied DIY buckets for, plus she made her first wedding bouquet. That's pretty cool. Daisy from Whangarei Heads says, finding my market has definitely been a bit of a challenge. I sell off a roadside stall, but I found this to be incredibly challenging over the summer holidays. However, I feel this was a lot about location and have now found a better spot that has shelter from the elements and lots of foot traffic. Now, this seems to be one of my best sales avenues alongside direct requests through social media. I also tried a few different local shops and have since stopped trying to sell there because for me it's just not financially viable. Daisy also comments, I feel it's just about slowly getting your name out there so people know who you are and what you do. I'd like to aim to grow larger quantities of less crops next year with a plan to possibly reach out to wholesalers. Daisy, that's fantastic. And you've got a plan. That's what we all need, is a plan. Astrid from Gulf Harbour has an honesty box at her business, Fawn Plants, and also sells bunches at a well-known cake shop called Coaster Cakes. Astrid thinks people have got used to the honesty box as she has had more sales from there this season. She has also enjoyed supplying at the shop where she also provides the cake flowers. That's pretty cool. For us here in Central Otago, our best channel has been wholesale to 2 supermarkets. They're related but in different towns. It's best because it's the most consistent and the least time consuming. The time save is the benefit of selling wholesale. The best return on investment though is still wedding flowers, even at the price bracket that we provide. We do very few full service weddings because I won't travel to do installations at a weekend. It's just too much time away from our regular sales channels of our bloom bars, which run on Fridays and Saturdays, but also our farmers market, which is on Sundays. The worst sales channel was our front gate flower stall, mainly due to a loss of product from the fluctuating temperatures, but also more upsetting, a lot more help yourself customers than we've ever had before. In past years, the front gate flower stall has been a good, safe, steady income of around $300 per week, but not this year. The farmers market was great up until the end of January. Then as soon as school went back in February and families felt the impact of all those associated costs, the number of people even coming to the market has dropped right off. The impact of the international political environment can't be underestimated as well. And then moving on to our next question, which was, how has this season changed what you will do next year? And Penelope from Martinborough said she's planting out another 1/4 of an acre for perennials and foliage and is having to put in more irrigation to cope. That's a huge deal, an extra 1/4 of an acre. That's a lot of perennials and foliage. Melanie from Manukau probably won't do summer snaps or will possibly do them in a different area. She'd also like to grow more asters as her small trial this year went well. She'll also focus on tender annuals for summer rather than trying to stretch the hardy annual season. For us in Central Otago, we will be completely changing our annual plantings. We lost so many seedlings for a variety of reasons, but in the end, didn't ever feel that we had run out of flowers. And that really means we didn't need those seedlings that we lost. So we'll plant things that do well for us. We'll plant more agrostemma. We'll plant more successions of matricaria, particularly tetra white, as it is the most popular flower at both markets and for weddings. Now, Sophia in Canterbury says that she plans on growing more Melope next year, which I've never grown, and more amaranth, and she will give celosia one more try. That was in capitals. But she's not sure that she will ever get celosia tall enough to use without a tunnel. I think I have to agree with that. I'd love to grow it. I love it. Can't grow it. Well, I can grow short stuff, not even useful for drying. Astrid from Gulf Harbour says that this coming season she'll be a lot more careful with her seedling and perennial choices. As she says, I've tried and tested a lot of perennials over 3 years. Now she's just narrowing it down on the favourites. But you don't know until you've tried them all. Yeah, we all do that, don't we? We love to try them all. It's just a flower grower thing. And that's just the end of the questions that I asked the flower farmers, but a few of them made comments that I thought you might like to hear, and I think they are worth repeating. Vicky from Hikurangi already has her winter projects sorted with getting her website and social media up and running. And this lady works full-time as well. But that's a great winter job, Vicky. She's already prepped her spring beds and has already got 80% of her bulbs in. Other spring seeds are sown in trays ready to overwinter in the garden in a few weeks when they emerge. She's feeling prepared for spring already. Melanie from Manukau just wanted to say that she managed to not have thrips this year, which has been a big issue in previous seasons on white dahlias. She comments further by saying, I should say I didn't have any thrips on the white dahlia beds where I sprinkled diatomaceous earth, but I did get them on white dahlias on tuberose where I didn't sprinkle the diatomaceous earth. That's a great learning. Luckily, the thrips don't discolour the tuberose, so she can then just wash the flowers to get the thrips off and it doesn't seem to affect the flower. That's pretty cool. While Melanie is still picking pretties, as she calls them, in April, she says they are definitely slowing down even though many dahlias are just starting to bloom. At the moment she has lots of cosmos and nerenes, boltonia and perennial asters. But now's the time for Melanie to start getting beds ready for all the hardy annuals, and a whole new garden has been cleared of coprosma, which she is going to plant with flowers that are velvet colours. I love that description, velvet colours. That garden needs to look good by mid-November when Melanie's garden is open to the public for a garden ramble fundraiser. Another nice thing Melanie would love to share is that this year she has a couple of florists who have picked up the flower growing bug from seeing everything she brings into her florist shop, The Wild Rose. She says, we are sharing seeds and seedlings and it's so nice to see others get the joy from growing. Come home today, she says, with a tray of snap seedlings that one of them has grown and brought in for me. How cool is that? Bronwyn from Darfield says, the season is coming to an end and at this point a frost would be nice to bring the season to an end as the energy is getting low. But Bronwyn knows everything she does now will set her up for next season. So she is digging deep. Sophia says that she's very glad she closed the farm shop over the Christmas mid-January period, as it would have been a waste of time to be open. But she's hoping to make it to Mother's Day this year, which is longer than they did last year. Sales have massively slowed since early February, and she's really struggling to meet goals at the farm stand. But it would be great to finish the season on a Mother's Day high. I just have to say that I think it is absolutely fantastic, Sophia, that you have set targets and you've got goals for the farm stand. So you're on the right track, even if you don't meet them. You're setting goals and you're working towards them. That's real progress. Daisy from Northland says that as a new grower, any advice is welcome with open arms. She definitely feels like she's in the dark at times on this journey. Take heart, Daisy. We've all been there. We were all first-year growers once, or maybe some of us feel like we were first-year growers for the first 5 years, but you do get there. So hang in there. Get ready for next season. You'll get there. Astrid from Gulf Harbour made a great comment. She said, remember, you can only grow what does well where you are. Concentrate on those plants and you'll be winning. Well, there were some fantastic insights there showing you how different plants and sales channels work for each of us. Now I think we all need to take Bronwyn's advice and dig deep into the energy store to get ready for next spring. And remember what Astrid said, grow what does well where you are and you'll be winning. And that's a wrap for this episode. A huge thanks to those who sent me in their notes, photos and reviews. I really appreciate it. Do listen in for more podcast episodes coming your way, and remember to like and subscribe. And if you want full transcript of today's episode, leave a comment and I'll send that to you. Remember to keep smiling and get those green thumbs a-working. To stay in the loop, follow Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers on Instagram. Even with big changes coming to their website, their Instafeed is a place for behind-the-scenes looks and a sneak peek of what's blooming next. Fresh cut flower wholesalers, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. That's it for this episode, Petals. I'm Jo Robinson and I'm signing off until next time, knowing that if we work together, we'll keep the New Zealand floral industry growing and flourishing.